Joe, good to see you.
Mojo, glad to have you online. A little shaken,
Man.
not stirred. Welcome to the Two Joes podcast in Salt Lake City, where yesterday morning we had an earthquake. And I must say, it was the first one I have ever really felt in my life.
First one ever?
First one ever. It shot me out of bed. I ran across the room, and at first I thought it was like this huge gale force wind hitting the side of the house. And then I woke up and realized, holy shit, everything is shaking.
Well, how long did it take you, Joe, to realize, okay, that's not a gale force wind. That is a gale force wind that isn't stopping. It's the same intensity.
Yes.
You know, like
it took me
winds will come and go, and they'll hit your house and make a noise. But this thing was constant.
Yeah.
It didn't take long to realize that was no.
It was about 2 seconds.
That wasn't. Yeah, about two.
Yeah,
about 2 seconds.
And that's only because I was waking up at the time, and it shot me out of bed, though. How about you? What was your experience like?
The same, really, but I stayed in bed for another 4 or 5 minutes. You know, I immediately texted some people I knew just to make sure that texts were getting through, and you know, everything's cool. And but then I probably stayed in bed another 10 minutes, and then got up and went and started checking for live coverage and, you know, YouTube videos that are already been uploaded.
Yeah, it was quick, wasn't it?
Earthquake.
I was impressed with how fast stuff got up online, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, indeed.
So we had plants swaying. We had a couple things fall off the shelves, but nothing major. Yeah,
you know, fortunately, there wasn't much major around the valley. I saw some bricks on the sidewalk, you know, and a couple things like that, but didn't hear of not only no deaths, but not even an injury. I don't think anybody even sprained their ankle on this one.
I was surprised to hear that a lot of people were without power and might still be without power.
Yeah. Several thousand, I think like 12,000 were without power for at least some time yesterday. I assume they're already back up and running by now.
Yeah, I didn't see.
Then, did you feel the aftershock that happened at like the big aftershock at like 1:11 p.m.?
No.
So the main shock was at 7:09 a.m. local time,
right.
And then there was like a 4.5 Richter aftershock at like 1:11.
Wow.
And I felt that one too.
Interesting.
The lights on my deck were swaying. My computer monitors, one of them was wobbling back and forth. And again, you could tell this was not a strong wind that just hit your house. This is energy moving through the earth, and it's shaking everything on the surface of the earth. Everything's shaking.
Everything. Yeah, it was crazy. But no, I only felt like a couple aftershocks afterwards because we all got up after that. None of us could go back to sleep. And so I was down in the kitchen making coffee shortly after that. And that's when I felt a couple aftershocks roll through. I think I felt 2 or 3. But I don't remember feeling anything at 1-ish. So
yeah.
Maybe it was because I was in my basement office. I don't know.
That could be too. Yeah. Yeah, my basement would have been much more absorbing than my upstairs is, for certain.
Yeah.
I was watching live news coverage when that aftershock happened at 1:11 p.m. and the news anchors, both of them says, "Oh, did you feel that? There's another one right there." And our lights, you know, it was, and it originally came through at a 3.9 on the Richter scale, but was later upgraded to like a 4.5, something like that. It was a strong one. It was very noticeable, at least at my end of the valley.
Yeah.
My side of the big bowl valley we're on right now.
Right. So you've lived here your whole life, right? This was my first earthquake, but you've lived here your whole life. Is that the biggest earthquake you've ever felt, or have you lived through others of the same size?
The biggest for sure. And really it's only the second earthquake I've been through that I remember. Really. The other one happened back in high school in like 1986. And it was, I don't know, a 4.2 or something like that. And again, it was early morning. It was a school morning, and I was the alarm had gone off. It was like 7:02 in the morning, and I was listening to one of the John Dan, the radio personalities who were local at the time, and then felt something just it's quicker than this one. It didn't last nearly as long, but you could tell the difference. I felt something skimmer through the entire house, through the ground, and that was not a wind gust. That was an earthquake. So it's only the second one that I know about that I have experienced firsthand.
Right.
And
that you remember.
I guess in California, they're making fun of us because they're going through like 4.5s twice a month. It sounds like.
Really? Wow. When I was in San Diego last summer, they had an earthquake, and I didn't even feel it. And I was riding a bike at the time, and I don't know. Some people stopped walking and stuff, but I just kept on biking. It didn't bother me at all.
You know how big it was?
No, I don't know.
Or the threes?
I don't know how big it was. But from my research, it suggested that this was the third largest earthquake Utah has had in the past, since they started keeping records over 80 years ago.
Yes. The fifth largest? Is that what you said, or third largest?
Well, my research suggested the third largest.
Okay. All I can counter that is a headline I saw that it was the fifth largest since Salt Lake was settled back in 1847.
Wow.
Might be the third by now. Might have been upgraded a bit. That was a rumbler, man.
It was.
It really was a rumbler. I was laying cozy in bed. I was warm and cozy in bed, but there for a second I wondered, are these walls going to come down on top of me?
Yeah.
It was a freak show.
My wife was worried about the ceiling fan falling on her because she couldn't move, of course. She has that bad leg. So she was pretty much stuck in bed. My daughter and I met each other at the door jam there. She shot out of bed, too.
Man. We've got two. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I was going to say, she was kind of freaked out. She had breakfast in that door jam. She didn't want to get out of the door jam there. So she just sat on the floor and said, "Bring me my breakfast right here." Poor girl.
Well, we're taught that's the safest place to be, under some kind of a door well. You got lumber above you. You got lumber surrounding you, at least in one dimension. You've got some solid lumber around you. Yep. But the thing that kind of freaks me out more, though, me and Joe, is that we've now seen 2 of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse right here in Salt Lake.
Mojo.
Did you see
him? You had me going there for a second. Oh, dude. That's funny.
So did you read the stats today?
The stats. What are we? Are we turning
it's like
toward?
A scoreboard.
Yeah. Are we shifting gears toward the coronavirus now?
Yeah.
All right. Tell me your stats.
Cool
yeah, absolutely. I think the earthquake thing. That's about all there was to say, really. We had some aftershocks. I guess we even had one this morning at 6 a.m., but I didn't feel that one. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
I heard there were over 100 aftershocks total.
Wow. Wow.
But did you see the other map? Somebody, some clever person put out a map on, I think, Facebook, and it showed how many earthquakes happen around the earth every single day. And there are many, many of them every day. They're happening as we speak right now. The 2.1 tremor, or a 1.8. Or maybe something big like a 3.5 that people actually feel.
Right. But they're miles. They're miles under the earth, down. And we don't feel them. Yeah, I suppose it's moving.
Most people don't feel them.
Continental drift, I guess, is still occurring technically. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting difference I heard about the fault lines. The Wasatch Fault, you and I live very close to a major fault line.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised it wasn't up around the fault line, and it was more by the lake out there.
Yeah, it was close to one, though. It was close to a fault line.
Yeah, I didn't know there were some out there.
And then compare those, or I should say compare the Wasatch Fault to the ones over in California, where they get lots of earthquakes.
Yeah.
And I think I heard a difference between them is what we experienced the other day was the ground kind of shifting up and down on a joint, on a fault, or a fissure or whatever, like two elevator cars going in different directions. You know, that's what our fault's like. The ones in California, they slide side by side. They're more horizontal shift.
More of a shearing effect.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Well, at least I watched a news anchor explain this to me, and I assumed she had just talked to somebody who knew seismology. I don't know, but earthquakes are fascinating.
Yeah.
They're that sort of. Go ahead.
I was going to say it shakes you up a bit. My legs felt a little unsure there for a bit. You know, it's like getting off a cruise ship and getting back on ground. You know, your legs feel a little funny.
Yes, the disorientation. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That was a real feeling, and I felt it when I was laying in bed and the earthquake hit. I was just, holy shit, you know, holy cow, and it lasted 6-8 seconds maybe total.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when it was done, I was, whoa, okay, that was wild. I was disoriented. I was very disoriented. And then just laid in bed for a little while longer, didn't feel any aftershocks, texted some people to know that phones are still working, and it was a wild day, man.
I texted a friend who lives in Magna, and he said everything was cool out there. One of my first thoughts I had was, what's this world coming to? First a pandemic, now a flippin' earthquake. Jeez Louise, how much more can we take?
Well, only two. We can only take two more. And
well, okay, here's another one. Biden's going to win the nomination. My world is being rocked, Mojo.
Yeah, I know, man.
Lord.
I did not want this. I did not want this.
This is something else, man. All right, let's go ahead.
Yeah, let's shift. Yeah, it gobsmacked me. It once again showed how wrong I was and have been many times. I really thought Bernie was going to be in Biden's position right now.
Me too.
I thought that it was going to be a big unifying thing across America.
Pretty much a slam dunk.
Man.
Everyone's pro Medicare for all. Everyone's pro strengthening Social Security. Everyone's pro strengthening our social safety net. Let's vote for Biden.
Every poll. Every poll, exactly. And then we go to every single poll that I've seen supported Bernie Sanders' platforms.
Yep.
All of these things he says, the polls all support him. And I thought it was slam dunk, and I got, again, gobsmacked and proved I was dead wrong. I was totally wrong. And but I'm going to vote for Biden.
Yep.
No. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Main show.
Okay.
I'm not voting for Biden. I'm voting against Trump.
There you go.
That's my stance.
You're blue no matter who. Yep. And I think that's a legit stance. So the DNC had some more primary contests. Some were canceled due to the pandemic. Others were not. So that raises the question in my mind, how valid are these DNC primary contests that they did hold because they were held during a pandemic where you're kind of told to self-isolate, stay indoors, don't go out unless you have to?
Great question. This is obviously one that you have studied for a moment. May I ask you?
Well, that's the question. That's the question that came up after I did my studying and took my notes and everything. Yeah. So I was just wondering if you have an opinion. Do you feel like they're valid? Do you feel like they're not valid? Do you think the DNC did the right thing or the wrong thing? And I can even kind of elaborate a little bit more on that. For example, Ohio, the governor said, you're not going to hold that contest. We've got a pandemic underway here. And then some judge came out and said, oh, no, you can't do that. They can hold their primary. And then the health guy came out and said, I don't think so. I think we've got a pandemic going on. You got to take this seriously. There's no primary contest. And now the DNC committee in Ohio is suing because they didn't get to hold their primary.
Wow.
I know. I was like, what the
Interesting.
fuck, man? That's because, a lot of these poll workers are elderly. A lot of the people that come out to vote are elderly. They pack people in. There have been reports in Florida where they reduced the number of precincts to try and, I don't know if they thought that would help the situation, but actually it created a worse problem because now you got more people and fewer polling places. It just, I don't get the mentality, the thought process that goes through some of these people's heads,
Well, yeah. That's a nebulous statement, but if these thoughts are going through Republicans' heads, it's because they're better at winning. They're super better at winning elections, and that's always been such a mystery to me that they don't have the most popular platforms, yet they win, and they win again. Okay, they got annihilated with Obama back in 2008 and 2010. No, back in 2008. 2010, the Democrats got annihilated, didn't they? I forget.
At the midterms, yeah.
And I'm rambling.
No, you're good. So I just want to get back to the fact that should they hold primaries? In my opinion, they really shouldn't be holding primaries during a pandemic. They should figure out how to do it by mail. They should postpone them. I mean, that doesn't make sense. The CDC saying don't get people together in groups of 50 or more. And well, when those polling places, a lot of them, you have more than 50 people going to vote, So I think that's just...
How much more?
It's just ridiculous. When this health guy comes out and says no, then you should respect that. To sue him after the fact is just kind of crazy. I got a lot of my information from watching Jimmy Dore today. He was irate about the whole deal. He couldn't believe it. So, yeah, and then you got these reports of crowds. Older people were in the library. This one woman was waiting outside for hours. She says it's packed in there. There's people shoulder to shoulder in there, and they've been in there hours waiting to vote, There were reports of voting irregularities in Florida, in Arizona. And so that's, a lot of the comments are like, oh, it's rigged. And I don't know if I buy that necessarily, but there's a lot of irregularities out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I wonder why it is, Joe. I just in the mail today from the federal government, I got my census form.
Yeah, me too.
But I tell you, they didn't actually send me a form. They sent me a link.
Oh.
Go to this website and fill it out. I did not get the full-on census form. Where you fill out your name. You have to, with a pen, you have to write down your name, your address, and how many people are living in your household, and all this. So why can't we do something similar with voting? We're already online anyway. It seems it could be streamlined. We could vote from home. We could vote very easily with our phones when you're in a certain location. We could do these things. It doesn't seem out of the realm of the possible, the potential.
Yeah, it seems very possible to me too. I don't understand why we're not pursuing that. But, they want to make it harder to vote. They don't want to make it easier to vote. At least that's the impression I'm getting. Neither Jimmy Dore was so upset because neither Bernie or Biden or Tom Perez told voters to stay home. He was really upset with Bernie. Bernie essentially was afraid of optics, I guess, and thought he might be seen as an opportunistic ploy to, say, stay home, don't go to the primaries and vote. Watch out for your health, So Jimmy was really upset about Bernie for that. And then Jimmy held up a letter that was signed by many doctors recommending that the primaries be delayed and go to mail-in only. But then the DNC, they went ahead and they threatened the local DNC to say, if you don't hold your primaries before the June 9th cutoff, we're going to penalize you and decrease your number of delegates by 50% or whatever. It's like people don't realize we're in a pandemic. They don't realize that we have this thing out there spreading silently, quietly, and it's a real problem.
Something I would like to know. Something about the DNC that I would like to know is it written in their charter that they have the power to choose another candidate to win the nomination who doesn't win a majority? They can choose. No, let me rephrase that, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
let's say one candidate wins the majority, the 1,900 delegates, whatever is needed, the
Right.
2019, something, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say a candidate wins the majority, the DNC have the power to still pick a different candidate than somebody who wins the majority.
I think technically they do. But I don't, I think what Bernie was hoping for was to win a plurality, whatever that is, and then basically raising a ruckus at the convention and winning it that way. But now I don't think he's
plurality.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
The
plurality is just the majority. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You didn't win the thresholds. You didn't get the number that would be the overall majority.
Right.
But you got the most of anybody else running.
I think that was the case. He was hoping that Biden wouldn't get the majority either, but he would be close enough to declare a plurality or whatever, and then make a good case for getting the nomination. I got an email today from Tulsi, dude. Tulsi is suspended.
Really?
Yep, she suspended her campaign, and she's back in Biden.
Yeah.
She's back in Biden.
Man.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that either.
Well,
yeah.
And
even Bernie himself is reassessing his campaign, from what I heard.
Oh, he has to be. He has to make some announcements like that. You bet. And eventually, Joe, we've got to face the possibility that pretty soon Bernie is going to do a pro-Biden ad.
Yeah, he could. Quite possible.
Defeat Trump. It really is defeat Trump, defeat the oligarchy, defeat the fact that Amazon paid 1.3 in federal income taxes last year, defeat dark money in politics, defeat 500,000 bankruptcies every year.
Wait a second. What makes you think like defeating Trump and voting Biden in is stating making those statements? It's still going to be an oligarchy. I mean, Biden's not going to change anything. He's Mr. Status Quo, If we wanted to make all those statements, Bernie was our guy.
I'm looking at it from kind of a Lord of the Rings standpoint, where, the ring bearer has taken the ring 1,000 steps in the wrong direction, and simply getting Trump out of office and replacing him with anybody will be 3 or 4 steps back in the right direction.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think you're right there.
No matter who it is.
And, and Bernie, like Mike from the Humanist Report was saying today, he's done a lot. Look how we're talking about Medicare for all now. And basically the majority of the country wants it or supports it in some way.
Yeah, and Biden's not our guy there. He's not our guy for Medicare for all.
I couldn't name you one thing in Biden's platform that he's pushing or he's pro, he's for. I couldn't name one silly, solitary thing.
Something he could do there though is he could pick a VP. He could pick his vice president as someone who was staunchly for Medicare for all, like Bernie or Elizabeth Warren, and then he could evolve in the presidency, like Obama evolved on gay marriage.
Yeah.
Biden could evolve on Medicare for all. It's really the only solution. It's really the only.
I like that.
Maybe that's why he's winning. That might be why he's winning right now. He's getting a lot of moderates and independents to vote for him in the primaries because he's coming out against this government takeover of health insurance. The thing they're so afraid of.
Yeah, I mean, if Biden gets the presidency and he comes in there and he starts looking at Social Security cuts and stuff like that, he's going to get an earful really, really quick. He might, and that might be enough to make him say, "Whoa, okay, maybe Bernie was on the right track after all." I don't know. There is a glimmer of hope there, though. I see what you're saying.
Well, hope and hope. It's the one stat that still baffles me, Main Joe, is that every other democratic country in the world, an advanced industrial country, has Medicare for all or universal health services or some form that they do not see one bankruptcy a year ever because of medical debt. They don't. And that weight, the weight of that fact eventually has to come crashing down on our politicians, left and right, and until they figure something out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I that's what is so frustrating is because, people do support Medicare for all. But they vote for Biden. I don't know if it's just a matter of not getting the message out, or if they were basing it on purely what they thought that Biden was electable and Bernie wasn't. I'm not sure. I just don't know how their thinking goes. I think he was saying in Florida, they were asked who did they think was better for Social Security, Biden or Bernie, and 59% said Biden, when he has been, he's tried to cut Social Security 4 times in the past 40 years, and Bernie has always advocated strongly for it. So that's saying to me the message just isn't getting out. Biden's record isn't out there. People don't know this,
Another facet might be that Bernie Sanders poisoned himself by ever associating with the word socialism or socialist.
Yeah.
Even though he precedes it with democratic socialist, I think that poisoned him.
Yeah, because when they talked about him, they always associated it with just pure socialism in Venezuela, and he never really fought back on that quite hard enough. He should have been more forceful and saying, no, look, not Venezuela, Denmark, Sweden, democratic socialism. Yeah, it's true.
No, he did that a lot, man, Joe. He did a lot of that.
Okay. I heard his pundits do that a lot, but I never heard him really do it. Yeah, okay. That's good to know.
I heard his opponents, they would mention Venezuela, or even communist Russia, or something, And he did. He said, "No, I'm talking Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Italy, in many countries that are doing just fine without any medical bankruptcies. Mm-hmm. They're doing just fine. They're around year after year."
He often brought up Canada. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border, which is a good one. Yeah. Some people said he kind of sunk himself when he was like, Joe Biden's my friend, and he also mentioned that he thought Joe Biden could beat Trump, and a lot of people think, well, maybe that's kind of what sunk him. Well, if he's your friend and you think he can beat him, then that's good enough for me, kind of thing. I don't know, maybe he shot himself in the foot with those comments, and he didn't, a lot of people are saying he should have tried to attack Biden harder, and he never, really attacked Biden the way he should have and could have.
Well, the attack politics, that's not Bernie.
That turns out people. That's true too.
Yeah. He did something so cool in a town hall with one of the CNN, Anderson Cooper, the gray-haired Anderson Cooper, and Anderson asked him a stupid question. Really, it was, well, after the stunning first 3 primaries, caucuses, whatever, and do you feel, Bernie, Senator Sanders, that you have a commanding lead right now? And Bernie just kind of looked at the ground and looked at the audience and raised his hand, both hands in the air, and said, "Who cares? What kind of question is that? If I think I have a commanding lead, what does it matter? Who cares? Let's get back to the topic. Get back to the issues."
The issues. Yep.
It was cool. It was the opposite of Trump. Trump would be saying, "Oh, I have a beautiful lead, a terrific lead. There's no way I'm going to lose it now. It's going perfect. I never denied it. They all said it was a beautiful lead, and I never denied it. I don't know. I get tired of Trump talking to me like I'm an idiot.
Well, speaking of Trump and democratic socialism, guess who has come out and is proposing and is urging Congress for a UBI, essentially? Is it
Mnuchin now?
Trump and Mnuchin. Yeah. We mentioned Mitt Romney floating this idea on the last podcast, but now ABC News is reporting Trump is urging Congress for a UBI to give direct cash payments to most Americans. He's looking at $1 trillion, only proposing as of now. Some are saying that the checks will be a little more than $1,000, and probably in total will only be about 2 checks. But 7 million people work in restaurants. And if you listened to our last podcast, you remember Mojo telling us about Denny's and how it was a skeleton crew.
Yeah. And, many others who really don't have the infrastructure or wherewithal or the social media presence to do some kind of home delivery or carry out or something like that. Many of them just don't have that capability.
And the workers don't have the resources to plow through or to survive a 2-month layoff with no pay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. There are many desperately could use a $2,000 check right now. Many of our fellow citizens, fellow Americans, would do wonders with $2,000 right now. They could pay a month or two in rent. They could buy all the groceries they need. They can self-isolate. They can stay home and keep the heat on, And also, main joke, I heard some stop-in-place orders given the utilities, many utilities around the country, the water and the power and the gas and things like that, where no shutoffs will occur while we are battling this transmission, this invasion of the COVID-19.
Yeah.
Have you heard similar?
I haven't heard anything official, no, but I know we talked about that a little bit at the last podcast too, that should be something they should try. We're talking about Kyle Kalinski's pause button, and that was one of the things on his pause button list. So I'm glad to hear that they're talking about it seriously. I haven't seen anything official on that yet, though.
Yeah. I heard a marvelous statement from Robert Reich. Do you know the name Robert Reich?
Yes,
Reich or Reich?
I think we'll go Reich. I listen to his stuff on YouTube fairly often, yeah.
Yeah. And he recently said, once again, we're going to see Republicans bail out industry once again, like we did 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And really, if they were capitalists, if they were actual capitalists, what they would do is say, no, like Boeing and Delta and any other industry that needs billions of dollars from the government, we're not just going to give it to you. You can take out zero interest loans and you can use your collateral as, you can use all of your assets as collateral. All your planes, all your hubs, all your employees, your pension funds, your everything, any asset you have, you can use as collateral. Let's spend this money on the workers at Denny's and the people who really need it. Joe,
I think
forget the industry.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's part of the reason why they announced this, urging Congress to do this UBI, is because they were talking about bailing out Boeing and Exxon and some of these companies that you wouldn't think needed the help. And then they probably got enough feedback. They were like, "Oh yeah, we should probably look out for some of these workers too." I'm glad to hear it. I hope they push it through. I don't know if old McConnell's going to let it go through, but if Trump's urging it, who knows? Maybe he has enough clout to do it.
Well, you used the correct word. Our last podcast, you said the situation is fluid, totally fluid,
isn't it?
Now.
I mean, we're doing this 2 days later, and look at all these changes already we're talking about, and we've still got stuff to talk about. Yeah, changes every day, every hour.
Well, and that's where a company like Exxon recognizes how fluid it is right now, because they can look at it and say, "Oh, and nobody is using gasoline right now; they are staying home." And a lot of flights are canceled. And, man, the worldwide demand for oil has plummeted like we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So that situation is fluid. Exxon might find some way to really profit off of this. Who knows? Who knows? But what are all the oil-producing countries doing right now? I heard of an oil war, a price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia.
Right.
I don't hear. All I hear now is earthquake and COVID-19. I don't hear anything about that.
Well, I did hear one snippet on that. They said that the gas prices are the lowest they've been since like 2002, price per barrel of oil. So it's really tanked.
Oh, well, no, you said gas prices.
Well,
it's going to take a while.
I'm gonna say price of oil, a barrel of oil. Their benchmark kind of thing. I think that's what they meant. Yeah, I haven't been to the pump recently, so I don't know if it's 2002 prices. I kind of doubt it, but that's what they were saying.
I have a couple hundred shares in a company called Williams, and they mainly deal with natural gas and the many liquid byproducts that come from that. So essentially liquid natural gas and a little bit of electricity, and their prosperity is directly tied to the price of a barrel of oil. If oil is trading high, then Williams is doing great. When oil drops, Williams drops like a rock. And so I've seen my shares absolutely crater in the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm really thinking right now is the time for me to pump maybe 10, 20 grand back into Williams, because when this is over, we're still going to be moving gas, and oil is still going to be happening.
Things are going to rebound for sure.
Yeah. Might be the right time.
Might be. It might be. Well, you know how last time we were talking a little bit about the homeless and how they were a very vulnerable group out there without any roofs over their heads and kind of packed in tight with one another. So also a Jimmy Dore show started talking about that a little bit. I guess the California came out and said they were going to work on housing the homeless during the coronavirus. The governor of California said they've got over 100,000 homeless, and they're identifying hotels and motels, which are kind of empty because people aren't staying in them at the moment. They've found a bunch of trailers, and essentially they're going to help the homeless get off the streets and be able to, social distance themselves. So yeah, isn't it interesting how a pandemic can bring out all these things that Bernie's been fighting for 40 years plus? Why don't we house the homeless? Why don't we give people Medicare or free health care? At least health care that's free at the point of service anyway. And a UBI. How nice would that be? Bernie didn't really propose the UBI. That was an Andrew Yang thing. But still, all these things. Pandemic comes along and you realize what a good idea they are.
Well, and not just what a good idea they are, but how it seems we can put them in place easily when there's this giant event. Why can't we do this any other time? It's a mystery to me.
That's what Jimmy was saying the same thing. He was like, trailers? Really? Well, where were these trailers before? That was so funny.
I remember, Nate Joe, when I was much younger, 6, 8, 10 years old, every summer my family would venture down to a beach house, and not a beach cabin, like bamboo and shit, but a beach house, and stay there. Every morning we'd go in town, get some donuts or breakfast, or do some, grocery shopping, and I would see across the street in a parking lot, there were 50 or 100 people looking for work for that day, looking to work that day. And then I started wondering, okay, there they are. But when we came back later this afternoon, they were all gone. They weren't here anymore. Where did they all go? And it's what you just said about the homeless situation. They probably lived in tents or some ramshackle housing within a couple of miles of where I saw them. It was an amazing thing. It was. We can handle the homeless population. We really can, even if it is tent cities. If it is that, get them off the street, get them covered, and it doesn't cost that much. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
Not like it does. Corporate welfare costs a lot more, a whole bunch more.
I agree. Yeah. So last podcast, you posed a question that I couldn't answer. So I got out the little Google box and did a little research. So do you remember what the question was? Essentially, it was something along the lines of terminus. How does the coronavirus outbreak end? How does an outbreak like this ever end? So what I found...
Oh.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, Google Box.
Yeah, Google Box. I Googled it, yeah. So I found this good article by Vox, and they talked about it. I could post the link. But essentially, they said if you can do it early, if you can get it early, you can contain it. So that's one way you can shut down a virus. And an example of this is the 2003 SARS outbreak. They were able to contain that, and they were able to basically shut it down that way. That's why we really didn't hear about it. It wasn't really a blip on my radar at all. In the case,
no, it made headlines. SARS made a lot of headlines for a month or two.
I barely remember it, though. That's what I'm saying, yeah. I mean, in this case, we're going to remember where we were when the COVID-19 virus came out, but I don't remember what I was doing or where I was when the SARS thing hit, So in the case where containment doesn't work is the COVID-19, basically, because they didn't contain it. And part of the problem why we couldn't contain this virus is because it's such a good silent spreader. SARS was not a silent spreader. And also because...
Not silent.
Yeah. SARS was not silent, and they were able to test for it pretty fast, Whereas in this case, it's a silent spreader. We're still trying to work out the testing issue. So containment at this point, probably not going to happen.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, so if containment doesn't happen, which it doesn't look like it's gonna, then it could become endemic, and it's going to end up like the common cold. It's just always around, which we kind of talked about on one of our other podcasts as well. It's like, this might just be the new normal,
There's another thought. That's an interesting thought right there, Main Show, is we dealt with the common cold and the fatalities of the common cold every year, annually. We've dealt with the flu and the fatalities from the annually for many, many years. This might be a new normal. We might have a new term in the lexicon, maybe, if I can use that. COVID. COVID is another cold. It's another flu. It's another thing that is just always there. It's always there. Isn't it amazing? We've gotten rid of measles pretty much, and smallpox and polio, but the common cold and the common flu are with us every year, and there's nothing we can do.
Well, we do have a flu shot that you can get every year, but because there's so many different strains of flu and they never know which one's going to flare up, it's only mildly effective, right? Maybe more than mildly effective. I don't know.
True.
So
it saves lives, I guess. Probably the best way to say it. I would assume, I don't know the statistics, but more people get a flu shot every year, then we see a decrease in the fatality during that year. I don't know, Angel. I really don't know. So
if it does become endemic, then hopefully we can, like polio, develop a vaccine for it. That's another way a virus could get wiped out, So that's a possibility. Or they also mentioned antiviral treatments. So just some way to fight the virus. Not so much a vaccine, but just a way to say, oh, you got the virus, we're going to put you on this drip and we're going to wipe out that virus kind of thing.
Yeah, and if it's in you, we will kill it. And if it's not in you, we'll give you this vaccine. That means if it does enter you, it can't do any harm to you.
Right.
It's amazing what they're able to do.
It is.
Hats off to these researchers to day and night in a lab, looking at how things grow and respond and
that's
kill.
One of the things I found out from gluing my face to the computer screen this last couple of days is that they're doing a lot. A lot of researchers are out there working hard to figure out what's going on and how to stop this spread and figure this virus out. So another way a virus could end up petering out or not becoming a factor anymore is immunity. And we touched on this a little bit in our last podcast too, and you were saying, but building up an immunity to something takes generations, which is true. It takes time to build up an immunity. And they also said something to the effect of that 50% of people 50% of the population would have to become immune to it. So basically, you'd have to have a lot of people immune to it so the virus couldn't find another host, essentially.
Yeah, another factor. Exactly.
Yeah.
It cannot find a host that works for it. And that, again, goes back to the term mutation. This year, the virus didn't mutate correctly. It can't find a good host in this population. But man, 2 years later, it mutated just right. Now, COVID is spreading across the globe. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, they said that's part of the reason why they think the Spanish flu, the first round of Spanish flu, it was deadly, but it wasn't huge. But the second round, when it came back in the fall, it had mutated a bit. And that's why so many people died so quickly. So let's hope this virus doesn't mutate,
Wow.
And the last thing on this, how does the coronavirus outbreak end, is the virus could become less deadly over time just through evolution. So let's hope that's the case versus
that could happen
it gets
too.
worse, So that's
another possible factor.
That's basically it. Those are the path forward as far as what's going to happen. What can we expect to happen in the future? Essentially, containment probably not going to happen. We're hoping for a vaccine or at least antiviral treatments. And down the road, way down the road, we could build up an immunity to it, and the virus could peter out that way. Or, hopefully the virus will just become less deadly over time. But I guess at this point, we're hoping for a vaccine or some way to really treat it.
Yeah. Again, medical research. Everybody out there with their eyes on a microscope right now. My hat's off.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
To Joe, salute to you guys. Way to go. Keep up the good work. Hopefully you're successful.
To Joe, salute. That's the first time. That's got to go down.
That's a T-shirt.
Well, right on, man. Joe, can't thank you enough again for getting me out of my house for an hour. It's this is so valuable. I was used to self-isolation well before COVID-19. I know what it's like to work from home.
Yeah, me too.
And maybe only see people on the weekends, and it's, but I think it's been a little easier on you and me than everybody else out there who's lucky enough to be able to stay home during this time. And not everybody is.
It's surprisingly hard on my daughter to stay home from school. As much as she complained about school and going to school, she really misses her friends. She's a social animal, and she's really kind of struggling a little bit. She sees them on her computer. They do FaceTime and stuff for classes and whatnot, and that helps a lot. But still,
that helps a bunch.
She spends all day on that computer, and it's not the same, but it does help.
Well, I'm sure you've explained to her a number of times how, different things like this happen in the human experience, in humanity.
Well, it's tough to explain that to her when it's never happened in my lifetime or even in, people older than me's lifetimes. Yeah. One of the people that seem to kind of think that this whole containment thing we're doing or this whole flattening the curve thing we're doing is probably causing more harm than good, that kind of surprised me, was Elon Musk. He seems to be in the camp of, it's just a flu kind of thing and not to worry about it too much. But to Elon Musk, I want to say back in 1918, a bunch of warnings came out about the Spanish flu. And there were two cities. Philadelphia chose to ignore the warning and had a parade with over 200,000 people in attendance. St. Louis shut down and isolated like a lot of people are doing now. They canceled events. They told people to stay home unless it's, absolutely essential you go out. And St. Louis managed to flatten that curve. Philadelphia did not. 3 days later, every hospital bed in Philadelphia was full, and within a week, 4,500 people had died.
Philly, St. Louis. Did they flatten the curve?
St. Louis flattened the curve and had a lot fewer deaths. They didn't have that spike. That's what we don't want to have happen, is that spike, because that spike means you're overwhelming your hospitals, your clinics, your nurses, your doctors, right? And we don't want that to happen.
Well, that's the big one. Exactly. That's the number one thing that has been that I've seen most on social media and network news and radio when I'm in my car is go ahead and act like you've already got the virus. Mm-hmm. Pretend that you've been tested positive. Now, how are you going to behave so that nobody else gets it?
Yeah,
that's the big part. And that was some great advice, but again, only for those who find themselves in a good situation where they can isolate, they can stay home, they can work from home, they've got some money saved up, that they can ride this out for a month, or maybe 2 months, who knows how long. But, again, act like you've already got it, pretty much.
Yeah, and I wonder what the percentage of people can afford to ride this out at home without paychecks coming in. And I really hope that this UBI goes through somehow and we find the people that need it the most and we get the money to the people that need it the most. I think that would be a great thing. I think it'd be a great thing. Mojo, at the beginning of this podcast, you mentioned the stats. Let's go through the stats. I got a couple stats for you. This is based in Utah. I looked up the Salt Lake Trib today and I said, okay, how is Utah doing? And here's what I found. The total number of cases in Utah right now is 41. The total number tested are 700. We've only tested 700 people.
700.
Because this testing is so limited, we really do not know the actual number of people in Utah infected with the coronavirus.
Yep. Got more stats?
Well, I've got a concern. The Trib is also reporting that there's already a shortage of test equipment and supplies. You got to be freaking kidding me. They have 41 cases. They've only tested 700 people, and they're already having a shortage of equipment and supplies. Is that just poor planning? What is going on there? I tend to think we'd be more prepared if we had Medicare for all because we just have more people looking for doctors on a general basis, right? My wife said that was a rabbit hole. You can't really go down that. But, Germany has more beds per person than we do. I believe France does as well. We're obviously not prepared for a pandemic of any sort if we can only test 41 patients and already we're short on supplies here in Utah. I mean, come on, Utah, we got to step up our game because I can guarantee you this isn't going to be the last pandemic we'll ever see.
Well, I can see another side to this one, though, Main Joe, is Utah really hasn't been singled out as one of the major affected provinces around the world. There's one factor. And number two, because we have such a low number of confirmed cases right now, perhaps this medical equipment that we need is being better directed to other areas, other provinces where it's much more sorely needed. And number three, Utah is kind of isolated. We don't get huge crowds moving back and forth, and we're also not seeing kids on beaches like they are in Miami.
Could you believe that?
Salt Lake Valley is pretty well locked down, pretty well, and the people have done it themselves. It's not like we needed the state to come in with armed guards.
Mm-hmm.
The Salt Lake Valley, I think, is pretty safe. I agree with you. We definitely need more testing kits and possibly ventilators. I certainly agree. But there are other areas of the world that need them much worse than we do.
I think you made some stellar points right there, and you are absolutely correct in a number of those. I'm just saying, I believe that is why we can't get more supplies in, because they're needed elsewhere. I totally believe that.
Yeah.
And you're right, we are isolated. We're not New York City. But, on the other hand, this sucker spreads so easily, and it's a silent spreader.
Easily.
I think if we're 10 days behind Italy, okay, well, who are you talking about 10 days behind Italy? That's New York City, right? Okay, they're 10 days behind Italy. That means what? Utah's 20 days behind Italy? I think we're on the up ramp. Because we just jumped to 41 from 28 in a matter of 2 days.
Yeah.
And without
a
lot of testing, I think if you haven't started self-isolating yet, now might be the time to do it. We might be getting ready for a spike here.
I do believe the numbers are going to get more alarming over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I think they will. Nobody knows how long. And did you see the most alarming number from yesterday, at least when it comes to America, is the number of cases in New York State doubled in the last 24 hours. Now, that was this morning when I heard that. It more than doubled in a 24-hour period. Mm-hmm. So it is going to get worse, Main Joe. And here's another alarming stat that I heard from, I guess, an epidemiologist, an infectious disease expert, where he said that for every confirmed case that is reported that you see on your screen, whether it's worldwide or just in America or just in Italy or, in Wasatch County, whatever, the number might be 5 to 10 times higher than any of these stats you see. So there's 80 or 40 or 80 people infected in Utah. Multiply that by 5 times or 10 times. That's kind of what we're up against right now. It is spreading very fast. And stay home. Don't let it spread.
Yep, I agree. It's a silent spreader. It is what's the word? It's nefarious that way. I also saw this a video from a Princess Cruise passenger. So this was that cruise ship that got stuck in Japan, right? And they had the virus on the ship, so it had to be docked there for many days. And then finally they started taking people off the ship. This was from a UK couple. They were on that ship, and they were told to monitor their temperatures. Everyone on the ship was given a thermometer, and they were saying, monitor your temperature, and this is what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he said he had a cough, but it was very mild. He didn't have a sore throat. Occasionally his temperature would spike, but it never would sit there and maintain a high temperature. So he didn't really have a fever, but the temperature would spike every now and then. And then they came in and they finally tested him, and he was positive. And then 4 days later, they took him off the ship to a hospital. And as he was walking off the ship, pulling his little suitcase behind himself, he got very, very short of breath. He couldn't keep up with them. And that's when he realized that he had it and it was serious. So it's very mild. These symptoms are very, very mild. And by the time you realize, I've got it, I've got a shortness of breath, well, now you need to get to the hospital. It's serious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the ease of transmission, and I also believe it's the death toll that have people paying attention to this. Yep. Most people. But the death toll mainly occurs above elderly and immunocompromised, if I used that word correctly. I think I did. Mm-hmm. Immunocompromised.
Right.
Those are the main victims.
Yeah, this guy was over 60, and he was a diabetic. He wasn't, he looked like he might have been a little overweight, but it was hard to tell because he was still in the hospital bed. And that's the thing that kind of concerned me the most after, the mild symptoms concern me because people are going to have a slight cough. They're not going to think nothing of it, and they're going to go out, and spread the virus that way. But the thing that got me the most is he has been in the hospital now for 3 weeks, plus the 6 days before he got to the hospital. So we're going on 4 weeks here. And he's still testing positive for it. These people that are exposed to the virus, they're only self-quarantining for like 2 weeks. So if they have the virus, it could easily still be there 2 weeks after the fact, and they could go out and spread it that way. So, man, this sucker is just nefarious for spreading. We got to be cognizant of that.
It makes me wonder, Joe, if we're just going to simply try to get the COVID-19 virus down to undetectable levels in a person's body, just like we do with the HIV. Exactly the same thing. We institute these antiretroviral agents. Mm-hmm. I think I said that one correctly.
Cool.
And the most famous example in the world is Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
Irvin Johnson. He has had AIDS since 1991, I think, or No, not AIDS. Not AIDS. Forgive me, listeners. He has not had AIDS. He was discovered to be infected with the HIV and has been alive since then. And they have introduced protocols and therapies with him where they do an HIV test. They can't detect HIV in his bloodstream anymore. They can't even see it. It is down to undetectable levels, but they know he still has it. That's one of the freaky things for me, Main Joe, is there are certain viruses, I guess, I don't know if it's every virus alive or just certain viruses. Once they're in your body, they never go. They never leave.
Interesting.
Is COVID this? We know HIV has this capability. Is COVID one of these? Once you have it, it never leaves you?
Yeah, there's still a lot we don't know, and I just discovered the other day that these two athletes up in Toronto, I think it was Toronto. Anyway, they were, one played for the NHL, one was the NBA, and they just both happened to use this one interview room, one day apart. And the guy who used it first had tested positive for the virus, and the guy came in after him. They were using the room for press or whatever, and he ended up getting the virus too. And they've tracked it to that's how he got the virus. So it stays on surfaces is what I'm trying to say. And so that's kind of freaky too. I think they said like it can survive on a surface for like 72 hours. Some people say more.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure, but I think you can pretty much bank on it being there for a while. And that's concerning too. Just such a great spreader. Yeah.
That is a great insight into kind of understanding the differences between viruses. You just mentioned it can survive on a surface like a countertop or clothing or something.
Doorknob.
It can survive for like 3 days. I think COVID-19 can survive 3 days.
72 hours is what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also remember hearing the Surgeon General back in the 80s when AIDS was really coming into the news. And he mentioned how AIDS is such a weak virus that we take a sample of it and put it in common household bleach. In 20 minutes, it's dead. It can't do anything. It has stopped replicating. It is no longer, it's a dead organism. So this shows the difference between what viruses are and what they're susceptible to. What can kill them? How do they kill us? How are they transmitted? Yep. All of these things.
Yep. I know more about viruses now than I ever wanted to know.
Well, no, wanted to know, but had to know.
Had to know. Yeah. Well, I'm a curious individual, and I'm trying to protect my family, and the only way to do that is to understand as much as you can about the situation. And that's part of what we're trying to do here at the Two Joes podcast, is to help you understand as much as you can. We're not experts. We're just average Joes. I'm just looking up things on the internet and reading stories and trying to get some firsthand accounts in there as well, just to help you understand what we're up against. Be vigilant. Wash your hands. Stay home if you can.
We're seeing the same headlines you are too.
Yep.
And they alarm us also. That some of them are real, some of them are fake. Take it easy. Do your research.
Take it a day at a time.
If you're able to stay home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Know that there are researchers out there, scientists working hard to come up with a vaccine or a viral treatment program and better test. And they're doing their best.
Fred Rogers said, Mr. Rogers, like he said back a long time ago. Well, he was asked, why does evil happen in the world, on the planet? And he goes, well, when it does, just look for the people who are trying to help. And there's so many people out there trying to help right now.
For sure.
And I see it on Facebook and Instagram, text messages, and emails.
Yep, I see it in
all
comments.
over the place.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Wonderful thing. Man, Joe, thanks again for getting me out of my house. You know, every remote thing we do here, I feel like I'm able to leave my house. And that's such an important thing for me. I love it.
You're very welcome. I love talking to you and getting your opinion and insight on these things. You help me stay grounded, and maintain my sense of hope for the future. I don't want to lose that.
Thank you.
It's all good. We're going to get through it one day at a time. Until next time, listeners.
Indeed. And music will be a part of it. Can't wait for the next jam when COVID-19 is a thing of the past.
There you go.
Thanks again. Man, Joe, good to see you.